Anybody ever see the film Idiocracy before? Idiocracy is a film that was written in 2006. It's a science fiction dystopian comedy that Mike Judge wrote. And in it, he tells the story of two people who take part in a top secret military human hibernation experiment, only to awaken 500 years later in a world where anti-intellectualism and commercialism have run rampant. There's no social responsibility, human rights are almost non-existent. And each time that I watch the film, because it's a comedy and it's very cynical, part of me is laughing, but then another part of me is deeply concerned. Why? Because it's all too easy to imagine that the world put forth in the film could be where we're headed as a species. In the last 100 years, we've split the atom, we've spliced the gene, we've landed probes on Mars, we've even flown a few of them around Jupiter and Saturn and taken high-resolution photos. We've built great, big, awesome things. New science and new technology is being unveiled almost daily. And it's saving lives and streamlining communication, growing businesses, and improving global trade. However, with all of these monumental achievements, the climate's still changing at an alarming rate. Income equality is still greater than it's ever been. And millions of people are still dying annually from things like malnutrition and basic treatable illnesses. On top of that, we still lie to one another. We still stab each other in the back. We still crave power and prestige and wealth, even if we have to achieve those things at the expense of someone else's well-being. Is this the world that God envisions? If you look up the word devolution in a dictionary, the definition will say something like this. Devolution or de-evolution or backward evolution is the notion that a species can revert to more primitive forms over time. A species can revert to more primitive forms over time. So what do you think? Are we evolving or are we devolving as a species? My own response to that is, it depends. And my response is twofold. I would say that we're evolving when we witness something that's moving humanity forward toward better forms, and we participate in it. And in contrast, I would say that we're devolving when we witness something that's moving humanity backward toward more primitive forms, and we do nothing to stop it. And in light of that, I think it's accurate to say that the choices that we make as human beings have the potential to evolve us or devolve us. That passage that we just heard read from Psalm 12 in the Old Testament was written near the end of King David's life, about 1015 BC. And even in something that old, we see that this tension between the evolution and the de-evolution of human consciousness is still there. Again, the passage says, "Help, Lord, for no one is faithful anymore. Those who are loyal have vanished from the human race. Everyone lies to their neighbor. They flatter with their lips, but they harbor deception in their hearts. May the Lord silence all flattering lips and every prideful tongue. Those who say, by our tongues we will prevail, our own lips will defend us. Who is Lord over us? You, Lord, will keep the needy safe and will protect us forever from the wicked, who freely strut about when what is vile is honored by the human race. The writer here is making some strong statements. The writer is wanting people to move forward, to evolve into something better. But all that the writer is witnessing is how so many are going backwards and becoming more primitive. The writer even laments that some of those who were once on a better path have vanished from the human race altogether. 1015 BC. This is nothing new. Our world and the people in it are in a constant state of being pulled backward or forward. And if you look back through history, you see that this happens in almost every generation. And depending on the choices made by the people of those generations, the world gets better or it gets worse. Here in the United States, there was a time when a person's social status and their value and the future possibilities for their life were based on the amount of melanin that they had in their skin. And guess what? That was enforced by law. If you were born a brown-skinned person at this time in history, you were required by the law to use separate restrooms, water fountains, restaurants. You had to live in different neighborhoods. You had to go to different schools. And you were always paid a lower wage than everyone else. And to make it worse, it was only those like myself with pale skin who were empowered to enforce all of these things. And oftentimes these things were enforced with violence, threats, even murder. And I think of that now today, that time period in the history of our country. And I wonder how it was ever even possible that pale-skinned people would collectively agree to uphold such a detestable way of living. Why would you treat someone differently because of the color of their skin? To someone my age, I just can't fathom it. But guess what? At that time period in history, people went along with it. But that was like hundreds of years ago, right? I mean, come on, people were just ignorant back then, right? No. Segregation wasn't ruled unconstitutional by the U.S. Supreme Court until 1954. 1954, that means that there are still people living today, a lot of them, who remember what that world was like. And out of that generation came a few brave souls who decided to push back on it, something that they knew deeply within themselves was wrong. And they paved the way for the civil rights movement in this country. Because they made a choice. The choices that we make have the potential to evolve us or devolve us. Where does that speak to you in your life today amidst the polarizing issues of our time? Are you evolving or are you devolving? I'm sorry to break this to you, but there is no third option. You are supporting one or the other, even if your support is your silence. Everybody do me a favor and just breathe. It feels heavy in here. It's all right. Truth is like medicine. In 1946, a German Lutheran pastor named Martin Niemöller wrote a poem about the cowardice of German intellectuals and clergy, including himself, following the Nazi Party's rise to power and the subsequent purging of their chosen targets. And in this poem titled, "They First Came," he writes, "First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." That wrecks me, and it should. I need to be reminded of things like that when I see oppression in the world and I choose to look the other way. I'm not saying what I'm saying this morning to entertain you. I'm not saying what I'm saying so that you'll have this temporal spark of inspiration followed by a quick nod to love and justice and then go back into your life as it was. I know these things are hard to hear, and I'm saying them this morning in hopes that they will jar you and make you squirm a little bit and provoke you to think more deeply about the impact of your future choices. The world is not a thing. Society is not a thing. Culture is not a thing. People are a thing. And when human choice is collectively compounded, that's what makes up the world. That's what makes up society. That's what makes up culture. If you remove human beings from the equation, none of those things exist. Everything that we see and interact with is the product of human choice. And the hard truth is, and I know it's difficult to hear, the hard truth is that if you choose not to speak up, then in spite of whatever you are privately opposed to, you are affirming that thing with your silence. Our role as human beings, as children of God, is to add our voices and our sweat and our tears, and if need be, even our lives for the good of the world and the people in it. Jesus Christ said this: "When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All of the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them one from another, as a shepherd divides the sheep from the goats. And he will set the sheep on his right hand and the goats on the left. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, "Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world." Listen to this. "For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, a foreigner, an alien, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you sat with me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will say, the righteous, the holy people, the sacred people, the church people. Then the righteous will answer him saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you? When did we see you thirsty and give you a drink? When did we see you as a stranger and take you in? When were you naked and we clothed you? Or when did we see you sick or in prison and we came to sit with you and visit you?" And the king will answer and say to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these, you did it unto me." How would you treat the people that you despise, that you disagree with, that have done stupid things and are paying for those mistakes? How would you treat those who are unjustly oppressed, persecuted, segregated, cast to the margins, unable to find a doorway back into a good life? How would you treat those people if you really believed that the same consciousness, the same essence, the same core, the same life that is animating you is animating them? The same God that is in you is the same God that is in them. How would that change the ways that we live in the world? God is a God of justice. And God is a God of love. God loves people more than anything. But the difficult reality is that people will only realize that love if we show it to them, just like someone showed it to us. The choices that we make have the potential to evolve us or to devolve us. I was thinking, and I know the lyrics are a little strange. They make sense to me, but I took Greek and Hebrew and stuff that's completely useless. But the song we sang called "Praise Adonai," I was thinking while we were singing that, because I remember studying the history behind that word. In the Jewish faith, Adonai is the word that is often used for God, or you'll often see in some Jewish writings G_D. It's considered a sacred, high, lofty thing to use the name of God. And one is not to use it flippantly. So Adonai is often the term that is put in place in a sentence so that proper respect is paid to the divine. And what I like about that is that it takes this, I don't know why we do it as people of faith or religiously minded people, if you are. I don't know why we are always trying to define God. I don't know why we're always trying to fit the vast mystery that is God into a tweet. How is that possible? The infinite cannot be described by the finite. And what I like about that word, Adonai, is it's saying God is so big, God is so vast, God is so mysterious, so all-pervasive, that I recognize that I can't even define it with my words, let alone my thoughts, let alone my life. So I'm just using this word as a placeholder because I can't put a definition on something this vast. And I think that evolving as people of faith requires that of us. We cannot evolve if we don't have anything to improve. We cannot evolve if we don't have things that we are questioning. We can't evolve if there's not something that can be done better. And if we're not moving forward, there is no sitting still. There is only movement forward or backward in our development as people of faith. And wherever you are in your life today, if you can explain the vast mystery that is God in a paragraph, even in a few chapters, even in a book, stop. We don't know everything. The ways of God are beyond what we can possibly dare to even think, ask, or imagine. And it is that open-endedness, that mystery that just widens and continues to move out ahead of us, that pulls us toward evolution. Because the minute we've got it figured out, we start to regress. All right, that was a tough one today, huh? Yeah, everybody okay? Feel like I should do something just relaxing to end this. Let's see if I can get this to work. Nope. Wow, when you're bald, that kind of hurts. Right on target. Yeah. Let's pray.